Hi guys, I'm back and it's been 2 weeks in a row, so aren't we lucky? So in this episode, yes, we have got the camera out, and today I'm just going to talk about little things, little, I don't want to call them tips, but tips they are, is things that I've learned by A, reading around the subject, and B, experience coming out and shooting, because coming out and shooting with the camera there's no substitute for that. Absolutely none, because you can read all the books in the world. It's not until you come out that you start to realise what works for you, and that's the beauty of woodland and trees, is it is unique and it is anonymous. If you've got an ego, don't shoot woodland, because it ain't a popular genre in general. Sure, a lot of people say, oh, well, I love it. Well, that's great. But in general, your big vistas are the ones that are going to get the likes and the views on social media. But don't let that put you off. And the other thing that puts people off, obviously, is because it ain't easy. But talking about focal length, a bit of advice is just pick one focal length. Whether or not you decide, right, today I'm going to shoot wide angle, I'm going to shoot at 24mm, and if you've got a zoom lens, put it at 24mm and don't deviate from that, yeah? Or you can maybe go for your, I'm talking full frame, or so full frame equivalent, right, 50mm, sorry, 24, or you can go 50mm, or you can go 70mm, or you can go 90mm, depending on what lenses you've got, and stick to it. If you've got a prime lens, then, and you've invested in the prime lens, then put the prime lens on, because then you know you can't cheat. And what that does is that forces your eye for the composition. And what you'll find is I will not put it on a tripod. Yeah, I will put the camera into a relatively auto mode, so auto ISO. Yeah, I'll shoot at 1/125th of a second or above, and I'll just go with that prime lens on, or that fixed focal length, let's say 24mm, and I will walk around the subjects that I'm interested in, and I'll come backwards, and I'll come forwards, and I'll go left, and I'll go right, and then I'll go click. And then I will spend an afternoon, or a morning, or an evening in local woodland doing that. And then what I do is I go home, high shutter count, go home, put them on the computer and work out what works and what doesn't. And it's not really a case of what works and what doesn't, it's a case of you start to get your eye in and you start to understand how things will improve and how things won't. So going back to this, what we've got is I've got the 70 to 200 lens on, and I'm shooting this Aperture, and we'll talk about Aperture in a bit, but I'm shooting this Aperture at f4, and that's as wide open as this lens will go, because I'm after a certain type of shot. Now, the advantage of your telephoto ranges is it does keep your verticals more vertical. Doesn't really matter these days with things like Lightroom, because they can fix those distortions, but in the past it was more important. But what the telephoto lens does is it squashes everything together, and the way I'm shooting at the moment, and I'm on record so you'll be able to see it, is I'm shooting into this line of trees here that you can see in front of me, and it's a pretty shot, which will be made better in different conditions, but what I'm using is I'm using the Aperture to try and soften things off. So I'm shooting at f4, I'm shooting ISO 64, and I can afford to shoot at ISO 64 today for one reason and one reason only, and that is because the conditions aren't windy. If the conditions were windy, you've got no choice but to increase your shutter speed, and often the only way that you can increase your shutter speed is by increasing your ISO. So you either go home and don't shoot if it's windy, or what you do is you up your ISO. Now with this camera will go to a high ISO, higher than 800, and shoot lovely images at that ISO. Now, why I'm mentioning the term 800 is a lot of your cameras if you've not got something like the 850, which is high megapixel, and has got a big full frame sensor, if you shoot at around 800 ISO in the woods, you should be fine. So that's the reason I'm mentioning that. I can actually go a lot higher with this. But that's how you improve your exposure and keep things still with the ISO. So you're always playing with that triangle. But if we look at that composition, what you can see is it's leading us into the shot. Because we're an f4, that is gonna blur things out in the background and create depth with blur because we haven't got any foggy conditions. And all I'm relying on is the natural light that's coming through the canopy today. 2-second timer, and I'll be honest with you, if I was shooting this for myself and you weren't here and everything wasn't getting wet, I would actually put the cable release on. It's quarter to 9. I was up at 6. You know, no. You're gonna say, yeah, you get up at 4 in the morning, or 2 in the morning, or 1 in the morning. Yeah, but you're not wet and you're not stung your leg. Somebody said on one of the podcasts I've got a great face for audio. I don't know what the hell they're talking about. Anyway, if I spin round behind me here, you can see there are some lovely silver birch, and this place is above Hathersage. Over in the distance there, in the valley, is Padley and Bowl Hill. And I just mentioned it's called Surprise View Car Park, but there's some beautiful birch trees here, which in the right conditions, which actually, I'll be honest with you, it's pretty good today to shoot them, would be great. And this would be perfect for that prime lens that I was talking about, picking a single focal length and then getting somewhere or finding somewhere like this and then choosing your compositions. And people mention it loads, don't they? With your composition, you're really not so much following your classic compositional rules with the woodland stuff. If you've got an area of foreground interest, great. But what you're trying to do is you're trying to lead the viewer into the shot, like this shot here. You can see that we're being led through the scene, and that can be done various different ways. Number one is finding an opening, and number two is finding an opening that's got light on it. However, to maintain interest with a woodland scene, really, for me, it's all about the light and the textures that I'm seeing. So different, because that's me. Yeah, that's what I like to try and get out of my shots. This shot here, which was taken locally, and I'm not trying to hide where it was taken, I've just forgotten. I'll put a thing on underneath it. This had numerous elements in it. Number one, it had water in the bottom right hand corner. Number two, it had the interest of the tree that had, or the sapling even, that had fallen over. But that wasn't the reason that I took it. The reason I took it was to nick a statement from a guy called Nigel Unsworth, who commented on the picture on Instagram. I took it because of the light and the way it was shining and the texture, or textures plural, of the different elements within the shot. So obviously you've got the softness of the water, you've got the harshness of the rocks, and then you've got the textures of the different colours of foliage, particularly on the right hand side with that little bush that's, I think, an overgrown piece of rock, which looks lovely, and then the flecks of light hitting the background. And what basically happens with that light, in my head anyway, is that led you into the shot. Now, I was lucky that the shot worked relatively well from a possible classical compositional point of view, because you got the water and then you got the tree as your main element, and then you got your background. But even though the image is busy, because of the way that the light takes you to from the front to the back, it works. Driving along, you see things when you should really be concentrating on the road. And today, that's the same thing has happened. I've been driving along to another location and I saw some beautiful light in these here woods. I've already taken the shot, which is just as well because the light has gone, but I'm just going to go through the process with you. So the reason that I've taken this shot is when the light was there, this shot was backlit. And what I mean is the sun is coming from this direction here and I'm shooting towards the sun. And basically when you've got a leafy canopy, you'll get beautiful light coming through the leaves, and it makes it for a nice shot. Only thing that we've got going against us today is there are little chinks of light that we talked about in the first episode that can't be helped. Now, in the first episode, I said, right, what you want is you don't want any of those, and you don't. And I said, if you can clone them out. And somebody said, well, make sure you tell people that you clone them out. Well, if I'm going to look at it myself, it doesn't really matter, does it? If I was going to try and sell it to a magazine, then I would be, I would include that information. But that's another argument. This shot is going to have some sky in it. There's no way of getting around it. But the way I've composed the shot is I've put the tree in the way of a certain area of sky that was distracting in the main composition. Now on another day, I'm going to show you what you can see now in camera would be a perfect, lovely shot if the conditions were right. And what we mean by that, if we had a bit of mist, a bit of haze, okay? I like the shot. I'm going to take a test shot anyway. But what we've got there is you've got the wall in the bottom left-hand corner, and then you've got that lovely tree and the light coming through towards me. I'll stick the 24mm on in a bit and I'll take that picture. But basically, the image is what you see in there, but slightly more cropped in to take the left-hand corner out, because I'm shooting it 50 mil. Shooting at 50 mil. It's flickering at me. I don't know what it means. But that 50 mil just keeps things nicely composed, and the shot is taken. And we can kill two birds with one stone, because the reason I stopped was actually that composure there that you can now see in camera, which is the tree 2/3 to the right hand side, and that tree lit up, and the ground lit up, and the rest around it was dark, and that's what prompted me to stop. So again, at f11 I took the same type of shot, pano shot, vertical composition. What am I talking about? Portrait from right to left. So we'll show you these two images now, and they're a good example of what backlight and side light looks like, and what the light is doing in these shots is emphasizing or separating, or creating, I should say, separation. So it's creating separation by leading the viewer's eye into the shot and focusing the area of interest on that part. So you've got the light area and then you've got the dark around it. That's your side light shot, which is the tree. The one which is backlit is just going to be a pretty shot. So I hope you've enjoyed seeing my ugly mug again, the one that's made only for audio. Thanks for watching. I'm going to go home for a cup of tea and bacon butty. Yeah. And if you like it, subscribe, and if you don't, click that notification button. Next week, God willing, all the planets align, we're going to do a mixture of outdoors and indoors, but I'll be outdoors when I'm explaining indoors, if that makes sense. So we'll be going through some editing of shots. A couple of people have asked me, and I was going to do it anyway. And we're also going to talk about printing those shots, and I'm going to introduce my new monitor. So next week it won't be monetized, the video, because Ben Q sent me a monitor, and what I want to do is I want to pitch talking about that, about the benefits for you as a photographer and whether or not it would actually suit your workflow to get one. All I'm going to say is, at the moment, I have two monitors side by side and I never use my Apple monitor, but I'll talk about that next week. Peace.